Hello everybody, I'm William of AW Studios. Today I wanted to do a short video about the behind the scenes process behind 96.1, my film for Brick Film Day. I'm going to briefly touch on the concept behind the film and also detailing the process behind some of the more complex shots, such as the long tracking shot in the black void, and the process behind creating the multiplane sequences. Spoiler warning for the film if you haven't seen it already, as I will be detailing some elements of the plot, although if you're watching this you've probably seen it. But yeah, without further ado, let's get right into it. I kind of saw this as a spiritual successor to The Tracker Tracked in many ways, my Brawl film from last year. I kind of had like a similar tone and darker elements, and I also focusing on a character's sort of story within a particular setting. Like with Tracker Tracked, I wanted to convey a lot of the story through the atmosphere, the sound design, the visuals, with a lot of the story being implied rather than directly told to the audience. But unlike the Tracker Tracked, the setting of the radio station required a lot of dialogue, and finding a way to establish the world of the film naturally without the dialogue dumping, exposition was quite a fun challenge, actually. What I really liked about the setting of a radio station within the post-apocalyptic world of the film was the way in which it could practically still function as just one source of communication and entertainment, using all pre-internet technologies such as vinyls and cassette tapes. But I also really liked the idea that, assuming there were no longer any functioning news outlets, that old news, like old events from the past, would essentially just function as the closest thing that we would have to the news. I think that also kind of tied into the sort of character of Brendan, who spends a lot of his time reminiscing on the past, be that the memories of his co-hosts and the nostalgic music, but also the fact that any reminders of his current state of the world in the film leads him in this isolating void.
It marks the second anniversary of the fall of the internet. You're listening to 96.1, the number one radio station around.
Working with Chris Sliasis of Moon Live TV was a lot of fun. I sent him a rough draft of the script, and almost straight away he came bach with demo recordings, kind of give an idea of the character. And he had also done multiple versions. There was one that was a British talk show host, which is really great.
You're listening to 96.1, the number one radio station around. I'm your host, Brendan Felix.
And also the kind of more Californian.
I'm your host, Brendan Felix. And closing us off tonight is the 1979 classic, Don't Bring Me Down, by ELO. Whoa!
And I was just really blown away by the amount of improvisation there was. He added so much to the character. And looking back at the script that I'd made at the time, that sort of rough draft of the script, it seems really sort of simple, and a lot of the dialogue just isn't there because he just added so much to it. Amazing voice actor, sort of cheesy jokes and all that kind of stuff. He really just sold it just so perfectly.
In 1983, Bill Gates introduces the world to Windows 1.0. Yeah, before that, we only had doors.
My biggest concern going into this film was how I was going to visually sort of present the film in an engaging way, with the film primarily focusing on this one guy alone in a radio station, without a second person to really cut to except for the man in the pickup truck. So I looked at various examples of radio stations on film. I studied how various films shot their sequences, how these sequences were edited together, and the way in which the character sort of interacted and moved in the set in a way that would complement different shot compositions. But also just how some films presented the tone as well. So the void shot was by far the most complicated shot in the film. Originally, I was just going to do a kind of mirror set of the radio station, but obviously without a co-host, sort of showing the kind of absence of Larry, his co-host. But I just thought it may not be as visually interesting just having a carbon copy of the same set. But also as well, I realised how long the sequence was going to be. It would be sort of impossible to actually have a set that was that big. It just would look really weird. So instead, I kind of embraced the kind of impossibility of that shot and made it much more experimental, much more internal, sort of going into the sort of mind of Brendan in a way. It ended up basically being, I think, possibly my favourite shot, just because of what it kind of represents, with the kind of obscuring him in this little box and showing his isolation. It was also a really complicated shot just to do. Obviously, it was a tracking shot done practically with a dolly. Basically, I just took the base of a car and just sort of tracked it down like that, just moved it back. There was a lot of like post-production work that had to go into it. One of the annoying things with the C920 is that the wire kind of makes it move when you sort of push it back in a certain way, and it kind of made it sort of slowly sort of rotated to the left, and then I was having to push it back, and it was a bit of a mess. So I had to kind of stabilize it. Basically, frame by frame, I did it at one point. It sort of smoothed it out so that it looked better. The multiplane shots were interesting. I have actually done it a couple of times before. Some of my earlier examples would probably be like in Wayward Tides, very sort of like basic version of a multiplane shot. And then I think the most complex one I had done before this was probably in Ant-Man episode 5. You know, you've got like trees and this sort of mountain in the distance. It was still a shot that I was actually really pleased with. But there was a couple of things in that shot that I kind of felt like I could improve. Whilst the rest of the set is moving, the foreground by the car is sort of still, and that always has kind of annoyed me. And now, like watching it again, I wanted to try and find a way where the entire set could be moving, including the foreground. So I came up with this system based on the way that I actually build sets. So basically what I do is I take 18 2x4 bricks, I stack them together like this, and then I basically just get a layer of other bricks that are kind of the base colour, and I just make loads of these until I've got like a proper base for whatever set I'm doing. I really like doing this because it really sort of like allows you to kind of be more flexible with the sets you make. When you want to kind of change angles, you can just sort of like take bits apart and rearrange them. But one of the other things you can do with these as well is you've got these gaps here where you can put bricks, these particular sequences. What I did was I took two sets of 1x4 plates, I took them together, and then I also had a 1x2 plate next to a 1x2 tile piece. I made two of these for each square, and I put them together like that. And then I put them together like that so that they can very easily be sort of moved. And I always put these on the right hand side of these squares and leave these ones without them so that you can connect another one in front of it. And basically what I did then with the multiplane shot with the road, I would move the car forward, I would push the squares back to just roughly kind of line it up with where it was previously in the previous frame, and as soon as the square on the sort of furthest right is out of frame, I would remove that from the set and put it forward before it ends up in frame. And I did a similar method then with the other sort of like sections of the set, and yeah, and that's basically it for this video. I hope it gave you a little bit of an insight into the process of making this film, and yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.